Hello and welcome to the 2021-2022 school year and to our Fremont Unified School District induction program. This is the beginning of the orientation videos which you and your mentors are required to watch. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself and a little bit about the program and this video. So my name is Heidi Beck and I'm the induction coordinator here for Fremont. And this is going to be my fourth year in the program. So as you probably already know, if you have your preliminary credential, you are required to clear it through a commission-approved induction program, which our district provides. So if you are just joining us, this will be the beginning of your two-year journey. If this is your year two, then you only have this year to complete it. So I just wanted to make a note that I am recycling videos that I made last year. So I made orientation videos this time last year, and I'm going to use the same videos. I've just done a lot of editing to take out some of the stuff that applied to virtual distance learning. I know that we do have some of our candidates in the virtual academy. So, there may be mention of things that relate to you, but for the most part, I've tried to edit it to make it back to what our program was before the pandemic. So there may be some things I say that sound off, and that's just maybe because I didn't catch it in my editing. So just to let you know, we are expecting our program to be running as it was pre-pandemic. So the meetings will be in person as much as possible with flexibility, of course. And so if you have any questions about how things might be different this year, especially if you were in our program last year, don't hesitate to reach out at any time. And then like I just said, the videos I'm using are recycled. So some of the information may sound off, but we did not change the ILP. We did not change the collaborative log or any of our procedures. So all of that is the same. So it's all still very applicable. All right. And I look forward to seeing you in the next segment.
Here. So once you log in as staff, you always want to make sure you're in the right Google account or you won't be able to get in. So make sure you're using your staff one. And then you're going to go, and so staff and teacher link, you're going to go down until you see induction resources. And this is our page. So this page will be here all year long. It will have many different forms and different things that you'll need to be able to access. But I do want to say that we are also going to be doing our best to put as much as possible into the Google Classroom that we'll also be using this year. We've used it in the past, but we're going to try to have more information in there as well. So hopefully most of what you can access here, you can also access in the Google Classroom. So a couple things to draw your attention to. We have our handbook here on the left. This is going to be the only version of the handbook that we have. So if ever you need to come back and review any information, this is where you'll want to come. And I will be covering the handbook in a later segment. Our newsletters are here. So each month we will have a newsletter. Make sure you're reading those. They have lots of important information in them. We also have ILP resources. So once you get going with your ILP, you may want to come here and find some of our how-to videos, as well as some sample ILPs that have been submitted in the past. And then over here, we have our contact information, which I think you probably all have by now because you probably had an email or two from us. So this is here. And then down here, we have some calendars. So I'm just going to show you an example. We have one for year one candidates, year two and ECO, and then also for our mentors. So when you click on the calendar, this is just going to, kind of take you through different due dates and things that will be taking place throughout the year. So it's kind of a nice guide because it kind of shows you what to expect each month and when some of the important due dates are. So for example, you see that there's a reminder at the top for every month to read the newsletter when you receive it. They will be emailed out, they will be posted to the website, and they will be in the Google Classroom. So they should be fairly accessible. That's kind of the goal. Also, you can see that we have due dates for each of the collaborative logs, which you'll be submitting monthly. And then of course we have the ILP due date. So you're going to have 3 versions of the ILP. You'll have draft 1, draft 2, and then your final ILP. And so you can find your due dates here. This is the year 1 calendar. Just showing you this one. Make sure you maybe save this one, save whichever one is for you, just so you have easier access. You can always print it out and keep it at home or whatever you want to do. So these are here, and we are going to be adding some live links to these as well as we go throughout the year. So we'll have the newsletter up soon on here, and some other things here. Okay, and then the other thing is the collaborative log. So if you've been in our program in the past, if you were a previous mentor or maybe this year you're a year 2 candidate, I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that we only have one version of the collaborative log this year. So it's just this, which is the online form. Having paper where you have to print it out and get someone to sign it and those kinds of things might be more of a hassle since a lot of us are working from home. So we just figured we'd make it a little bit easier, just have one version. So this is it. It's a collaborative log online. And I will be going over this in the later segment as well, in more detail. But just so you know, that's where you can find it. Okay, so some of the other things that I'm going to be covering, like I said, we're going to go over the handbook in more detail. We're going to go over collaborative logs, the ILP, and then also Google Classroom. I'm going to kind of go through what to expect in Google Classroom, since we'll be using that for all of our assignments this year. So I've had a few people reach out already and ask, what should we be doing for our meetings so far? And, just to kind of get started, the first thing I would suggest is get to know each other. Get to know what your home life is like, what your work style is, those kinds of things. It's very helpful to know because you're going to be working with each other for the whole year, possibly the 2 years if you're a year 1 candidate. So it's always a good thing to do is start building that trust and building that relationship. So I would first suggest that. And then the next thing I would suggest is making some time to help the candidate, if you're a mentor, help the candidates place themselves on the CSTP continuum. So normally, if we were at school, we would be sending out physical copies of each booklet to every candidate, but that's not really realistic right now. So what we decided to do was make them all digital. So there's a PDF version here, and then there's a Google Doc version, and I'm going to just show you that really quickly. So it's just a digital version of the CSTP booklet. So it's the exact same booklet as what you may already recognize, especially if you're year 2 and you've seen this before. So it has the California standards for the teaching profession continuum. So in here, because we've made it digital, you'll be able to highlight, mark up, whatever you want to do to be able to show where you're at. So we ask that candidates place themselves once in the beginning of the year, in the beginning of the program for year 1, and then at the end of year 1, you'll place yourself again. And then for year 2, wherever you place yourself at the end of year 1 is your starting point for year 2, and you'll place yourself one more time at the end of year 2. So it's 3 times total, unless you're in our early completion option, which is the ECO, then you're only doing our program in 1 year, in which case you would just place yourself twice, the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. And I'll be talking more about the ECO when I get to the handbook as well. So when I'm saying place yourself, this is what I mean. What level you are at in your teaching practice. So for every element, there's 38 elements across the standards, across the 6 CSTP. You're going to determine where you're at for each of those 38 elements. So you may be at emerging, you may be exploring, you may be at applying. Most likely you'll be in one of those 3 to start with, unless you've been teaching for a long time. If you've come from out of state, then you may be further along. But I will say, even in talking with a lot of our veteran teachers, like our mentors, a lot of us would have a hard time justifying putting ourselves at innovating because we're all constantly improving on our teaching practice and growing. So I want to stress that we do not expect candidates to go from a level 1 emerging to a level 5 innovating in 1 year. That's not realistic. So keep that in mind when you're placing yourself. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's good to have these conversations with your mentor, because especially after they've had a chance to observe you in your teaching, they'll be able to help you decide where you are. Sometimes we tend to be hard on ourselves and we maybe don't see the growth, but our mentors will. And so if our mentor is saying, hey, I know you marked yourself at emerging, but I really think, I've seen some growth and I think you're more to the exploring part, then have a conversation. And it's a good way to figure out where you're at and really get a sense of your teaching growth. So anyway, this is what you'll be doing, and this is what I would suggest doing pretty early on in one of your first few meetings after you've had a chance to get to know each other a little bit. All right, well, this concludes the introduction video, and I will see you in the next segment.
Hi again, welcome to our segment on the collaborative log. So every month you are required to submit a log that tracks your meetings with your mentor. and it's always going to be the last workday of each month that this is due. I want to mention that, some of you might be having mentors at your school site. Some of you may be having mentors that are not at your school site. And so we are trying to be as flexible as possible with how the meetings take place. So if you feel comfortable and safe to do so, you are welcome to meet in person for these weekly required meetings that will be tracked monthly. But if you would like the option of using a virtual method, that is fine as well, but please let us know. So if you're using Zoom, if you're using Google Meet, or any other platform, that's going to be acceptable as long as you feel that that's best for you. So I wanted to mention that. And then we're going to now take a look at the collaborative log, what counts for the log, and then some things that you will consider when you are going through the program.
And we're going to talk about what can be placed on the collaborative logs. So like I said, you're going to be filling these out once a month and then submitting them, and they're due by the end of every month. And so there's a couple of different things to consider when you're putting activities on the log. So one thing is going to be the side that says induction specific work meetings. So those are anything that's directly related to induction work, such as watching these orientation videos, or maybe you're working on your ILP or those kinds of things. And also, you're going to be still having observations this year. And so when you have your pre and post observation conferences, those still definitely count on the logs as well. And then the other side, we have what we call CSTP specific work meetings. So remember, the CSTP are those elements that every candidate is going to be placing themselves on for the beginning of the year or the beginning of the program. And then they go back and revisit it at different points throughout the program. So the CTC wants to see growth across the CSTP elements, and this is our best way to do that. So whenever there's a meeting that's attended and you can link it to one of the CSTP elements, then we ask you to do that on your collaborative log. So if you attend an IEP meeting or some GLAD training that may be offered virtually this year, or any of your staff meetings, department or grade level meetings or anything like that, basically anything that's helping the candidates work and focus on their teaching practice should be considered for the collaborative log. And it's pretty easy to link mostly everything to CSTP 6, which is focusing on professional development as an educator. But we really do want to see a variation of elements linked here, because we want to be able to show our evidence to the CTC that we really promote candidates trying to show growth in all elements. So if the training that you're going to is focusing on student engagement, then you're going to want to make sure you match up that element for your log. So these are the things that we're looking for. If you ever have something that you're just not sure about, can this count for my log or not, just feel free to shoot us an email and we'll respond. And I'm saying we because I still have Shirley. So if you shoot either of us an email, we'll be able to respond to you and let you know if it can count on the log or not. So let's go ahead and take a look at the log. So like I said, we're just doing the online log this year. It's just going to be easier for us to keep track of all the information coming through if we have it in one place. And less paperwork and less passing around papers to get signed and those kinds of things is probably a good idea right now. So we just have one form, and it's just this Induction Collaborative Log, which can be found on the Induction Resources page through the FUSD website. And I'll just show you that also really quickly, just so you know where to find it. So when you go to the staff and teacher link of Induction Resources, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's Collaborative Log, and you'll just click on Submit Monthly Collaborative Log, and then it takes you to this form. So this is here, and we also did attach a digital CSTP booklet here, so that if you need to go back and look and decide which ones line up with your meetings, it should be handy now that it's right there for you. So down here, we have you, of course, put your email address, your school provider, your district provided email address, and the month that you're submitting for, your name, where you're working, and what site you're working at, and then, of course, your year in the program. And then here's where we want to ask you how many hours you worked on induction activities. And again, that includes anything I showed you on that slide, and includes probably even more than that. So anything that you can think of that would go on your log, we're looking for 4 hours. So just keep that in mind that if you're marking less than 4 hours, we're probably going to reach out to you and see what's going on and if we can help you get to that minimum of 4 hours. So if you're clicking about 4 hours or more than 4 hours, you know, you're not going to hear from us. But so just if you're not sure, just let us know. And then how many times have you interacted with your mentor this month? So interacted, right? It's going to look like a lot of different things. So I changed it to that instead of met with, because you may just be talking on the phone, you may be meeting on Zoom, or you may be meeting in person, and all of those things can count. So again, we're looking for that average of 1 hour per week that's required by the CTC standards. So again, we're looking for at least 4 times that you've interacted, because it should be about once a week. Of course, when we get around to holidays and things like that, you know, the winter break and the spring break, we do account for that. And so we know that there may be 2 or 3 meetings for that month, and that's fine. This question is, how many times have you been observed by your mentor this month? So it's okay if it's 0 sometimes, because we don't expect you to have an observation every month. There are 3 required for the year. So there will be many months where you're marking 0. Okay, so you are, like I said, asked to submit a monthly collaborative log, and this is used to document the amount of support that candidates receive each month. So I do touch on this already in the collaborative log segment, but just as a reminder, the CTC does require that candidates and mentors are meeting for a minimum of 1 hour per week. That is a minimum of 4 hours per month. It does not have to be all at once. You know, if you can meet 3 times for 20 minutes each in a week, then there's your hour. So however you want to break it apart. All right, so this is just what the form looks like, which I already will be covering in the collaborative log video, but it's here in the handbook as well, just if you wanted to preview that. And then we have some contact information. So we have lots of resources in our district, and we're very fortunate to have so many people who can help us with so many different things. So this first one is the federal and state program contact list. So, you know, if you have students, you know, if you're a Spanish immersion teacher or Mandarin immersion, we have our coaches that are able to help with any support you need for that. If you are working with English learners and you're in elementary, then we have someone here for that, as well as secondary. So all of the contacts are here, and they are just an email away if you have any questions about your students and you need some additional support, ideas, or resources. In addition to the Fed and State Department, we have the Curriculum and Instruction Department, and these are all of our instructional coaches. So we have it broken down by attendance area, as you can see. And so if you know, depending on where you're at, which school you're at, you can just see who your contact would be and reach out to them. Same thing, they're just an email away, and they'll be able to help you with any of your curriculum questions or just teaching strategies, classroom management, those kinds of things. Really a lot more than that. But if you just need some additional support, they are another resource of someone you could reach out to. So we have them here. We will also have different, you know, if they have trainings that they're going to be offering, we're going to be putting those in our newsletters. And we'll just try our best to make sure you know all the resources that are available to you. Okay, so candidate material purchases. This is kind of one of the perks of being in the induction program. So each year, candidates are eligible to purchase up to $200 of classroom materials. So that's kind of a nice little, you know, bonus that people often like to take advantage of. The way it works is you would submit a requisition form. And so you would just say the items that you want, and then Shirley will place the order and they'll be delivered to you. The $200 does need to include shipping and tax. So it can't be $200 and then plus, you know, adding on shipping and tax. It's a total of $200. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your math on what you're wanting to get for your students. There's always Teachers Pay Teachers as another, it's an online resource that you can use if you wanted to get some lessons on there. If you have anything that you're not sure about, if it would be covered, because there are there's certain rules about what you can purchase, just send us an email. You can send it to me or to Shirley, and we'll respond as quickly as possible. It must be reviewed by your principal and signed. So when you decide what you want and you make your list, make sure you run it through your principal first. We do recommend Office Depot because it's just a lot quicker, and a lot of the schools already do order from there. Amazon is another popular one. And like I had already said, Teachers Pay Teachers is possible as well. Books. So a lot of times people want to get books. just make sure that they're on the approved reading list for the grade level that you teach or the subject that you teach. So sometimes, you might be a 5th grade teacher, but you wanted to get some books from the 6th grade list. That's not allowed. Yeah, you got to get books that are at the listed for the grade level. So just make sure you check on that. And then requisition forms are due no later than November 13th. So just keep that in mind. It's not, this is not available all year long. We have to have a deadline. And the whole reason is you were supposed to get these materials to be used throughout the year. So this is kind of as late as we can go to where your students would still get the most out of it, but also give you enough time to figure out what you want to order. So November 13th, that is a hard deadline. Although we do give a 7-day grace period for every assignment, and we do have that carry over to this as well. So November 13th is the hard deadline plus a 7-day grace period. So that should give you plenty of time to figure out what you want to get for your students and place and give us that requisition form so that Shirley can get those orders placed and you can get them quickly and have your students have them in their hands. All right, so we don't do reimbursements. So what I don't want you guys to go do after this is start going and buying things and then expect to get reimbursed, because that's not how it works. For this purpose, we do the requisition form. So you need to put exactly what you're getting, and then we place the order for you. So just keep that in mind. Now, downloadable products, we did not in the past, they were not approved, but we have an exception for teachers pay teachers this year. Limit your purchase to consumable items. So you do, again, want to try to make sure you're ordering things that your students are going to be able to use. So, it shouldn't really be something that's just you're going to be using, but something that all the students will use or benefit from in some way. The materials are technically going to be property of FUSD, so that means they need to stay with you or with the students. Again, classroom site, we're not really there right now, so it depends on what you have, but if you're giving things that the students are going to be using, then that rule doesn't really apply. But the rule of no technology items over $50 does apply. That is just a district rule, and so make sure if you're getting anything that is technology, you're just making sure it's staying under that $50 limit. Here's a sample of a requisition. So you'd fill out your name and your school name and the date and all that sort of thing, and then the vendor, whatever the vendor is, if it's Office Depot, if it's Amazon, you're going to give item numbers if possible. Not everything has an item number, but put the item and then any kind of a description, and of course the prices and things like that. And don't worry, Shirley will be double checking the math on everything, but we do ask that you try to fill all this in as much as possible. And then have, of course, your principal sign off on it before you submit it to Shirley, to our office. Okay, here's another program perk. This is our partnership with the University of the Pacific. So that means that by going through the induction program, it's the equivalent of taking college courses. So our program is basically the courses that you're taking. It's not extra, it's nothing, it's just what you're doing in the program counts as courses. So you are eligible for up to 8 units per year. That means for the first year, you can get 8 units. If you complete all the assignments on time and you're not missing anything and everything's good to go. If you end up having more than 2 late assignments or more than 2 missing assignments, which missing doesn't usually happen because we do have to get a lot of this stuff from you eventually. But if you have more than 2 late assignments, then you'll be eligible for 4 units. And how it works is, you'll complete the program with us, or you'll complete the year with us, because you can do this for both years. So let's say you're a year 1 candidate and when we're at the end of the year and you don't have any late assignments, and Shirley lets you know that you are eligible for 8 units, then you would go to the University of Pacific website, which is coursesforteachers.net, and you would apply for those 8 units and pay for those 8 units. So again, when I say it's like college courses, you would pay for college courses, so you would be paying for the units. You're not paying to take induction. You have to go through induction to clear a credential, but you can buy units and move yourself along the pay scale. And it's kind of an easy way to do it because you're already going through induction anyway. And they're relatively cheap. They're $50 a unit, so that's hard to find. I know when I've tried in the past to move myself along, it was hard to find anything for less than $100 per unit. So this is a really nice program perk. So I would suggest you take advantage of it. So just a couple of things to know about that. If you decide to do this and you apply for the units, it's your responsibility to then purchase official transcripts They do need to be submitted to HR by September 30th of that school year. So like after this school year in June, we'll let you know how many units you're eligible for. You'd want to maybe go on and apply for those units and pay for them, and then purchase your official transcript. And then by September 30th of 2021, you'd want to submit it to HR so that they could go affect your salary schedule for the 2021-2022 school year. Still can't get over those numbers. Anyway, so that's what you'd want to do. So like if you were in our program last year, if you were year one last year, you maybe already did this and you maybe already submitted your units. And if you haven't, you have until September 30th this year for them to be eligible to move you along the pay scale, or affect your units, I should say, for this year, depending on how many you need to move yourself along. Okay, so again, eligibility requirements to earn 4 is that you complete everything, but maybe, like I said, you had a couple things late. But if you're eligible for 8, it's because you did everything on time, attended, and completed all the surveys by the due date, and had no more than 2 late submissions of anything. So that's a good one to know. And then this just kind of goes into detail about the units and about the University of Pacific, and of course the cost right there. All right. Okay, and then this is just a glossary of terms. So like we use certain acronyms. Sorry, I said terms. Acronyms. We use certain acronyms throughout the handbook, throughout our program when we're talking to you. So just so you kind of know what we're talking about here, you can always refer to this. Okay, this is another program that we have that we work with, which is St. Mary's College of California. You can also go through theirs, and they actually have a way for you to earn a master's. So there's information on here. I'm not as familiar with this one, but they have courses that you can take and get your master's in teaching and leadership program. So if you wanted to look into that, we do have all the details here. There's links, there's videos. You're welcome to take a look at all of that.
In this next segment, we're going to take a look at the ILP. I wanted to let you know that the ILP has 3 versions of it. We're going to be working on the same ILP document throughout the year, and I mentioned that again in this next segment, but just so everyone knows, there are basically 3 versions that are going to be due. So draft 1, which is boxes 1 through 5, will be due October 29th. Draft 2, which is including boxes 6 and 7, along with 1 through 5 that you've already done, will be due January 31st. And then the final ILP, which includes all of the boxes mentioned so far, plus box 8, as well as the observation section, that will be due on April 29th if you are a year 1 candidate, and it will be due at the time of your exit interview if you are a year 2 or ECO candidate. So we're going to take a look at some of the steps of what's due, what's coming up, and I do remind about the due dates. And like I said in my intro video, I did not redo this video. So when I mentioned due dates in the segment that you're about to see, those are the old due dates. So we put some little text bubbles up to remind you of the current due dates for this school year. All right.
Okay, so the first thing that you're going to be turning in on October 30th is going to be your ILP, as well as this, which is the ILP administrator signature page. So again, I'm going to always refer to the CTC. The CTC does state that administrators need to be involved in the ILP process. So the way that we take care of that initially is that we have the candidates, once they have their goals set and they have their plan for their ILP and they've completed draft 1, we ask that they share it with their site administrator. The administrator then knows exactly what goals you're working on so that they can help provide resources if they know of some that are available. So, depending on what you're working on, they may be able to put you in touch with certain people, certain trainings that they know of, or maybe they might be able to provide certain training on campus that aligns with your goals. So this is the signature page. You'll be having a copy of this in Google Classroom, and you'll be asked to make sure your site administrator has their name and signature and the date that they reviewed your ILP. So again, this is due October 30th, and it's due the same time as the first draft of the ILP. So when they go together, you'll do your draft, and then you'll have your administrator look it over, review it, and then sign off on it. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the template. So this is the ILP. This is the document that you will be working on for the entire year. We're going to be having a copy for each candidate in Google Classroom. So what you'll be doing is working on that copy throughout the year. You won't be saving, different copies of it. You'll just be working on the same live document throughout the year. So just go through it. You're going to be saying whether you're year 1, year 2, or an ECO candidate. If you are a year 2, if you could please list whatever CSTP elements you worked on last year. So that means whatever your goals were in year 1, because we are trying to get you to maybe try new goals this year. So we just want to make sure that you are working on something different. And then you're going to put whatever grade or content you teach. If you are a special education teacher, you will mark your authorization here. Your name, your school site, and your mentor name go here at the top as well. So this ILP is designed to assist the candidate in planning professional development based on their personal needs and to give the mentor direction on how they might provide individualized assistance. This plan is intended to be a living document, revisited and updated several times during the year and modified as needed in response to the changing needs of the candidate and employer. The candidate and mentor collaborate to develop this document based on their discussion related to the candidate's experience in their pre-service work or university transition plan. Once the ILP goals have been written, it is required that this ILP be shared with the site administrator and revised based on the site administrator's input, if appropriate. It is recommended that candidate mentor administrator teams meet in a non-evaluative context throughout the year to discuss candidate growth. So I do want to make sure that you are aware that this document can in no way be used for evaluative purposes. That means your administrator cannot use this to guide the decision they make to keep you employed at their site. So this is just for growth and it's just for induction. So when you share it with your administrator, keep that in mind. It's, they're part of the support group that we have around induction, and so they're part of someone who can provide additional resources for you and also give you input. Sometimes, it works out that the goals that you might have are aligned to some of the school site goals, and that makes it a little bit easier for them to be able to provide support because they're already going to be providing resources for those types of things that you're working on. Keep in mind like I said, there'll be 3 versions of this document that will be due to Google Classroom. And you can also see the ILP appendix, which is posted on our website under ILP resources, or you can see Google Classroom for the due dates. And then of course, we also have it on your calendars, the year 1, year 2, and ECO calendars. You'll want to look at the detailed ILP appendix for directions on how to complete each cell, but I'm going to go over that right now as well. But just so you know, you can always go back and look at the appendix for just some more detailed directions. And it also talks about which sections are due for each draft and each version. And like I said, I'm going to go into more detail on what's due for this first draft on October 30th. And then I'll create more videos later to go into more depth on the rest of it. So all year 1 and year 2 ECO candidates will select and work on a minimum of 3 CSTP this school year. If you are an ECO candidate, you'll be required to have 4 goals because you're doing the program in 1 year instead of 2. If you believe you have fewer than that to work on, please contact induction staff and schedule an appointment to discuss your ILP. This does not happen very often. We all have something we can work on. We all have something we can improve on, even if we already feel like we're pretty good at something or pretty confident in one area. There's always room for growth. So if you need help finding, what that is for you, let us know. But that's going to be something that you're going to discuss with your mentor early on. Okay, so on your ILP, you will have 3 areas of focus for the goals. So like I said, you'll have about 3 goals, and each goal will fit into an area of focus. So let me just take you I'm just going to go to this one box because it's going to be the same thing 3 times. So for the first goal, you're going to put it in box 1. What is your first goal or essential question? So that is, what are you trying to accomplish? And you're going to refer to the blue pages of the CSTP booklet for sentence frames. So I'm going to take you there right now just so you know what we're talking about. So the CSTP continuum, like I said, we have a PDF version and we have a Google Doc version. This is going to take you to the PDF so you can have like a quick reference. And when we say the blue pages, we mean these. So you want to go to the one for the specific CSTP. Okay, so here it is for like standard 1, for example. 1.1 is using knowledge of students to engage them in learning. So like for one of those questions, it could be, as a teacher develops, you might ask, how do I understand reasons for behavior? Or how do I get to know parents and connect with community where I teach? So when we say essential question or goal, these are what we encourage you to use for your sentence frames. It will just help you to keep consistent language, and that way it's showing your knowledge of the CSTP as you use that language in your goals. So you'll look there, you'll come up with your goal, and the nice part is you really don't have to think about how you're going to word it, because you can just use that wording directly and make it a question by asking, how do I, at the beginning. In box 2, you're going to briefly describe why this goal is a priority for you and your students this year in 1 to 2 sentences. So it doesn't have to be a big paragraph. It really shouldn't be, just really 1 or 2 sentences that tell us why this is your focus. Now, this isn't, the reason for choosing a goal shouldn't be, based on a want. It should be based on a need. So if you're seeing an area of need, like let's say you're having, you're struggling to find ways to formatively assess your student. If that's your need, then that's why you would explain it this way in the box. If it's something around your students, again, whatever it is, whether it's priority for you only as a teacher, or it affects your students as well, you're going to come up with why it's a priority. Okay, and then in box 3, this is where you identify the CSTP and element that this goal best relates to, as well as your placement on this element from the continuum of teaching practice. So like I showed you an example earlier, if you were working on CSTP 1, then and element 1, you would put a 1 here and a 1 in this section. Since this would be draft number 1, that is due October 30th, you will go ahead and put your first placement. So whether you are at emerging, exploring, or applying, or wherever you're at, that's where you put it on the document. And then box 4, this is called measurable outcomes. So we have 2 parts. The first one is 4A. At the end of the year, what changes would you expect to see in your teaching and or in student achievement as a result of your work? Refer to the CSTP continuum. If there is a section for both student and teacher growth, then both must be mentioned in this box. I'm going to show you what that means really quickly. So just first of all, you're trying to say what you expect to see. So this is like, what outcomes do you want to see in your teaching or in your students? Some people might say, I would like my students to improve by one reading level by the end of the year. That's an example of student achievement. Or if you're looking at it from the teacher side, maybe it's that you want to see yourself using different teaching strategies to reach your EL students. Then that would be something you would put there for the teacher side. Now, if you're not sure whether it's teacher growth, student growth, or both, this is why we say look at the continuum. And oops, I'm gonna make it bigger. Okay, it's really tiny, so I'm going to go back to this one. So in this one, if you go here, again, I'm just using it 1.1 as an example. You see here there is a teacher section and a student section. So in this case, you would need to come out with a measurable outcome for you as a teacher and a measurable outcome for your students. So something that you can actually be able to measure. When I was using the example of a reading level, you may be able to use your reading assessments to determine if students are in fact going to be improving by 1 reading level by the end of the year. If you were doing something for teacher or for your teacher growth, you might be able to compare your lesson plans over time to see if you're changing the strategies you're using with your EL students. So when we say check for a teacher and student section, this is what we mean. And like, just to show you the difference, if you go to CSTP 6, oh, almost there. Right here, there's only a section for teacher, because this is the one that's developing as a professional educator. So if your goal is around CSTP 6, you would only have measurable outcome language for the teacher, looking at it that way, okay? All right, so that's 4A. And then in 4B, what tool will you use or create to measure growth over time? So because we're talking about measurable outcomes, we need to say how we're going to measure that. So I kind of touched on this earlier when I was explaining what it might look like for the student and teachers, different measurable outcomes. So again, let's say you're working on students' reading levels, you may use a pre and a post assessment to determine their reading levels. then that would be your tool, right? The pre and post assessments for reading. If you were talking about your growth as a teacher and you're able to in your ability to differentiate your strategies, teaching strategies for your EL students, you may be comparing lesson plans over time or something like that. So then the lesson plans would be your tool. So if you're not sure about this, again, we're going to have, we already have lots of samples on the website, and I'm going to try to get more samples of what this looks like. But if you're ever not sure, you can ask your mentor, and you guys can always ask me as well, and we can work on this. So this is box 4. So again, what do you expect to see, and how are you going to measure it? Okay. And then box 5. So boxes 1 through 5 are the ones that are due for draft number 1 on October 30th. So box number 5. List 2 to 3 action plan items you will take to learn new teaching strategies to help you reach your goal or answer your essential question. Each item must include an outside resource, i.e. mentor, colleague, coach, online research, book, professional development, etc., and should not be done in isolation. So this means, what are you going to do to reach whatever your goal was? Okay, so the goal here is to try to get you to go outside of your comfort zone and utilize outside resources. So this area is not something that you should be doing on your own. That's what we mean by when we say should not be done in isolation. So sometimes we'll have teachers say, I'm going to create this unit by myself. I mean, they don't say by myself, but they don't say who they're doing it with. So then we might say, well, what's your outside resource? Okay, so again, we're just looking to see that you're coming up with things you can do to learn new teaching strategies. And then who are you learning these new teaching strategies from? So oftentimes what we see here that are like really good ideas are people say, I'm going to go to the GLAD training and get new strategies for teaching. Or they say, I'm going to go to one of the ELD trainings that I saw online, and I'm going to learn some new strategies for reaching my EL students. Or I know, like, we have our students or our teachers that teach the special education population, and they have their JAG meetings, right? So they're going to go, and again, these are all things that you can go and do, but you're learning strategies from something or someone else, like another resource. So that's what we're looking for the action plan items. What are you going to do to reach your goals, and who are you going to work with to get you there? And again, that I was giving examples of trainings, but that could even be something with your mentor. I'm going to meet with my mentor to discuss new strategies for classroom management in a virtual classroom setting. That's fine. Depending on what your goals are. So these are just examples I'm giving without really any, anything filled out here. So once again, if you're not sure, let us know. And we do give feedback on this throughout the process as well. So you'll turn it in on October 30th for draft number 1, and we will give you feedback. And before that, even your mentor will have reviewed it with you and given you feedback. So lots of opportunities for feedback and chances to edit it and everything. And like I said, it's a draft. And when we say it's a draft, we mean you can update it, change it as much as you want until the final. So you'll have your 3 goals, and I'll just show you the rest of it. So you'll have your 3 goals, and for each of those 3 goals, you will complete boxes 1 through 5. So 1 through 5 in area focus number 1, 1 through 5 of area focus number 2, and 1 through 5 of area focus number 3. And if you're an ECO, then you'll have a 4th area of focus, and you'll do boxes 1 through 5 for that. So that's for draft number 1. For draft number 2, like I said, I'm just going to touch on it for now because I don't want to overwhelm you. But for draft number 2, you're then going to just come up with a list of possible evidence that can show the growth that you said you're going to try to have in box number 4. So whatever your measurable outcomes were, whatever tools you were saying you're going to use in box number 4, now we just want to see the evidence of that. So going back to the students the classroom that the teacher that wants to see growth in the reading levels, right? Maybe it's those pre and post assessments on a reading test. That's the tool that they used. Well, now we'd like to see some of those students' pre and post assessment results in the evidence in box 6. So for draft number 2, boxes 6 and 7 are due. Boxes 1 through 5 should already be done, right? Because you did that in draft 1. Now you're adding on to boxes 6 and 7. So you're just going to have a list of possible evidence. And I say possible evidence because that can change. We learned that last year, that when things changed and we were suddenly not in the classroom anymore, we had to come up with different ways to collect evidence, and different types of evidence had to be used. So list of possible evidence due for draft number 2, along with a mid-year reflection. And that mid-year reflection is just, how are you doing with your desired results in box 4? So again, going back to box 4, whatever you said you wanted to see happen with your growth as a teacher and or your growth with your students, how is that going? Are your students improving in their reading levels? Are the strategies that you're using with your EL students working? So whatever it was that you said you're going to do in box 4, we'd like you to reflect on that in box 7. All right, and then for the final draft, it's going to be box number 8. So that's going to be the end of your reflections of the measurable outcomes. So now you're going to attach actual evidence to box number 6, right? Because for the final ILP, now we actually put our evidence in there, and then we're going to reflect on it in box 8. So you're going to select one of your pieces of evidence and say, how did this demonstrate student growth and learning for the first bullet point? And then how did it demonstrate teacher growth and learning in the second bullet point? And then what are your next steps on this goal? So this area of focus, what's your next steps? Okay, so that's just kind of a glance at what you're going to be expected to have done for draft number 2 and draft number 3. I'm just going to real quickly touch on a couple more things within the document. So we have, again, the 3 areas of focus. And then at the end, we have this section, formal observations by mentor. 3 total observations required, 2 must be of classroom instruction. So that means that at least twice this year, your mentor will either see a recorded lesson that you've taught and provide feedback on it. Or if they're fortunate enough and happen to have the same prep and don't mind using it, they can go ahead and pop into your classroom, to your online classroom, and observe you that way and go ahead and give you feedback on that. That could happen 2 times or 3 times, but minimum 2. Because the third one is can be something different. The third observation can be something like maybe the teacher, maybe the candidate is leading some sort of meeting. Maybe they're giving a training at the staff meeting. Maybe they are doing an IEP meeting and you're able to observe that. So there are certain things that they can do in place of instruction, but only for one of the observations, okay? So 2 of them have to be of the teacher teaching. So anyways, here's where the candidate will document the date of the pre-observation conference. So, and we'll talk about that more as we're getting closer to observation time, but you're going to meet with your mentor, candidates and mentors will meet. You're going to talk about what you want them to look for when they observe you, or what you want them to look for in the video that you recorded for them, those kinds of things, and then the date that they actually observed. So whether they're watching a video recording or whether they're hopping into your Zoom lesson, whatever it is, whatever date that happened, you would put it there, and then the date of the post-observation conference. So of course, after the candidate's been observed by the mentor, you'll then meet and kind of debrief on everything. And at that time, the mentor can provide the feedback that they wanted to provide for their candidate. So you document those 3 meetings for every observation. And then this very last section is the impact of observation feedback. So in 1 to 2 sentences, discuss the observation feedback you received from your mentor this year that had the biggest impact on your teaching practice. So from any of the times that you were observed, any of the feedback that you got, what one thing stood out as having the biggest impact on your teaching practice? A lot of things that we saw last year was honestly just the mentor telling them, hey, I noticed that you tend to focus on the left side of the room a lot. And the teacher had no idea that they weren't focusing on the whole classroom. And that had a big impact because it meant they were missing a lot and not seeing a lot. And I mean, so it could be something as simple as that. But that's just an example. So that I read last year. So yeah, that's the last section of the ILP. And then the only other thing that I want to mention now that will go into more detail as we get closer to the second draft is that if you read in box 6, it says, remember to check the ILP appendix about the types of evidence you must attach to your final ILP. There's so many different types of evidence that you can attach, but there are just a few requirements. And so one of those requirements is that one of your pieces of evidence throughout the document, so from any of your areas of focus, just one of those pieces of evidence needs to be something that reflects how you differentiated for an EL student. One of those pieces of evidence throughout the entire document needs to be of how you differentiated for a student with special needs. And then one piece of evidence somewhere in this document is a student of your choice. And those are what we call the focus students. So you're going to come up with 3 focus students, an EL, a student with special needs, and a student of your choice. And when we say student of your choice, sometimes people choose maybe one of their students who is a lower reader, maybe someone who's gate identified. You know, it just depends on what you want to choose for that optional one, or for that the one that you have a choice on. And then that being said, I know that sometimes we end up with a class and, you know, maybe you don't have any designated EL students. And so then we would talk about other options that would take place of that student. So yeah, so 3 focus students. Again, it's just one piece of evidence throughout the entire document. And just to give you an example of what I mean, if you see here from each action plan item, right, there's going to be 2 to 3 action plan items. And then there's going to be a piece of evidence for every action plan item. So let's say you had 3 action plan items. You would have 3 pieces of evidence. Times 3 areas of focus, that's 9 pieces of evidence, right? So let's say you have 9 pieces of evidence. Only one of those 9 needs to be something that shows your ability to differentiate for an EL student. Only one of those 9 needs to be a demonstration of your ability to differentiate for a student with special needs. And only one of those pieces of evidence needs to reflect whatever you're doing for your student of choice. Okay, so again, I kind of gave you a lot, probably more than I planned on, but I just want to make sure you know where we're heading with the ILP. So again, first draft, boxes 1 through 5 for every goal, and that is going to be on October 30th. Draft number 2 with boxes 6 and 7 added on, it's going to be due January 29th. And then your final ILP, which is the 8 box added on, so all 8 boxes are filled out, along with the observation section and the feedback section. All of that will be due on April 30th if you are a year 1. If you are an ECO or a year 2, which means you'll be exiting our program at the end of this year, it will be due at the time of your exit interview. All right, so this concludes the section on the ILP. Okay, so in this segment, I'm going to show you a little bit of a tutorial for Google Classroom and how we'll be using it for induction purposes this year. So if you were in our program last year, you already know the drill, but this may be a refresher. And if you're new, you'll want to pay attention to the steps that are involved when it comes to having an assignment. So I'm logged in as a student right now, and I'm going to be switching back just to show you what it looks like when you turn in an assignment. So as a student in the year 1 classroom, when you have an assignment posted like this one, this is just a test assignment. Nobody else has this. I'm going to click on it. And then the assignment, if it's a document that you're going to be working on, it will be here where it says your work. So, you know, you might click on it, do some work to it, add whatever it is. This is an example of a template for the ILP. And when you're done and you're ready to submit it when it's due, you'll come back here and you will click Turn In. Now make sure you click Turn In twice, because it will ask you right here, turn in your work, turn in. And now you've submitted your first assignment. Now I'm going to jump over to what I see as the teacher of the classroom. So this one student has submitted their test assignment. I'm going to view it. I'm going to give feedback on it. And then once I've done that, I'm going to return it. Because like we said, for the ILP, you're going to be working on the same document all year. You're not going to get another document for draft 2 and then another one for final ILP. It's the same exact document. You're just going to be adding to it. So once I've given feedback on draft 1, I'm going to send it back to the student by clicking Return. And then most likely I'll put a note here to notify you that I've viewed it, and now you're going to get it returned to you so that you can work on it for the second draft. And so then if I come back as the student and I refresh it, now you see there's this option to resubmit. This is because this assignment has been returned to you. So now let's say it's draft number 2 time. You open this up again, you add your boxes 6 and 7 for draft number 2, and then you're ready to turn it in. So now you would just click Resubmit and turn in. And now you've resubmitted draft number 2. And I only wanted to do this because last year we had some confusion, and I know some people in the class thought they had to save, multiple copies of the ILP and save it as draft 1 and draft 2, and that's not necessary. It's the same exact document that you're working on, and this actually keeps it a lot cleaner and less confusing when we're going to give you feedback, because sometimes, well, they don't disappear, right? So the year or the draft 1 may still be there even though you made a copy of a draft 2. So sometimes when we open it up, that's the first thing we see, and it may look like it's not done, but you did it. So just to avoid all that and to keep it easy, clean, and streamlined, please work on the same document that we give you for the year and just come back and resubmit once it's been returned to you. And that's the main thing I want to show you for the assignments. And we are going to be adding things to a folder. So I don't seem to have it on this view, but on the teacher view, under classwork, there's gonna be a class drive folder. So anything else that we want to share with you, like the newsletters, can probably go in here, and other documents that you'll get in other ways. We're always going to send emails with things, and we're always going to have it on our website, but we're also going to try to put as much as possible here. So you should be able to access this. And then once I start doing the office hours, then you'll be able to use the link that's at the top of the classroom. So that's right here for Google Meet, and that's what we'll use for office hours. All right, so this concludes the segment on Google Classroom.